tribe, welcome to the show. We've got a incredible guest today. I can't wait for you all to see who we've got today. But we're going to be talking all things Bigfoot here in Missouri and anything else weird we can come up with today. So I would like for you all to welcome to the show tonight, Miguel from Sasquatch Theory. Hello, Miguel. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad that you were able to, carve out a little bit of time for us today. So I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you contacted me to come on your show, and it's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Well, let's jump right into it. Let's get started. Miguel, I always love to hear what got you into this. What was the thing that made you go, I want to go look for Bigfoot?
Well, growing up in Missouri, I had some strange experiences that I just couldn't put my finger on. And I heard a strange vocalization out in the woods when I was about 12 years old. I'm not sure if it was Bigfoot or some other type of cryptid, but it really captivated my imagination. And I got into Sasquatch Chronicles. I started watching the show Finding Bigfoot. And I just listened to other people's stories because I was really open-minded. I mean, the things that I experienced, I couldn't really figure out per se, but I knew it was unusual. And I'll get into the actual sighting encounters and kind of skip past all the experiences, so that way we can talk about the most significant things that have happened to me.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. So my first experience, I went to a conservation area pretty close to Merrimack Springs in Missouri. And I parked my Mustang at this parking lot. I mean, people can't really find it unless they know the area pretty well. It's like the back door to the conservation area. And I parked my Mustang. I got out. I was trying to figure out where I was going to go hunt at the next morning because it was September 14th, 2018. And it was the day right before opening bow season. And yeah, I parked my car. I left the door open. I got out and I was looking off of a cliff. I was overlooking the Merrimack River. And I was just trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get down this cliff, cross the river, and get into the conservation area? And I don't know, I just stood there for a few minutes just taking in the view. And when I turned back around to go back towards my vehicle, I saw this creature on all fours run through the forest like a chimpanzee. And the logical part of my mind is trying to analyze what I'm actually looking at. And the first thing that I thought was maybe it's a wild hog out there, a black bear, or maybe it's a group of turkeys that are clustered together moving through the woods, because that's pretty typical. But it was definitely jet black and moving through the woods very quickly. By the time I got a good look at it, it had stood up on two legs and it slowly hid behind a large oak tree. So I was like, okay, that was definitely not normal. And that had to have been like an intelligent black bear to know to like slowly hide behind a tree like that, because that's all I saw was like a big black arm, just a big hairy creature hide behind a tree. But I stared at that tree for a little while and it never popped back out. And I was just thinking, dang, that was one smart black bear. I wonder what that was. And I left that day questioning what I actually saw, what I encountered. And I went back the next morning to bow hunt that area. And I just sat there in the parking lot like, I don't want to go in the woods. I don't know why. I had like this primal fear, like, do not go in the woods. Like, something's off, something's wrong. And again, the logical part of my mind said, if it is a black bear, you're going to be walking through the woods at night and in the darkness, going through a new area. So I just didn't hunt that morning. And I kept wondering about that throughout the year. And these creatures ended up coming to my house. I had an actual sighting in, I think it was June 2019. I was out there picking mushrooms on my property, and the chanterelle mushrooms were growing all over the place around the house. And I thought to myself, if I go deep into the woods, I'm going to find way more mushrooms. So I ventured off deep into the forest, and I didn't find more mushrooms. And it blew my mind that they were growing around the house, not too far away from the property. But as I was making my way back to my place, I was walking down my driveway, which is a forested driveway on a dead end road, and it's all surrounded by woods, 360 degrees. But I thought I heard something on my way back. It just sounded like something rustling in the leaves, so I stopped and I looked, and I didn't see anything. So I took about 3 or 4 more steps, and I heard it again. And I stopped and looked, and there was something black. I just thought it was a stump, and before I knew it, that black stump stood up and it walked off on 2 legs, and I knew right there, like, what this was. There was no mistaking it, like, "Oh, could that be a man? Could that be this?" Like,
Yeah.
it was definitely a Sasquatch. It was only 30 yards away to my left, and it walked off exactly like what you see in the Patterson-Gimlin footage, and it looked very, very similar to Patty in the face. Like, it had that same look, but at the same time, it looked different. And I'll describe it. It was anywhere from like 6 to 8 feet tall. I don't know because like I didn't measure it. Like I didn't put him on a scale.
Right.
I'm just kind of I'm guessing.
Right.
But it had a round head, almond black eyes, like coal black. I mean, kind of like what you see like in like demonic photos where someone's possessed, like black eyes.
Okay.
And it had a flat nose, long, thin lips, old, wrinkly skin. Some people have used the term like an old Native American, like old leathered skin, or kind of like tree bark, something like something of that effect. But it was jet black. It had like gray around its face, like it was definitely lighter around its face, and it didn't have like a chin. It was almost like it was connected to its chest, and it definitely had like a build to it. It wasn't built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like he was huge, but it like he wasn't shredded. Right. But he was definitely huge. And yeah, like I said, he was jet black, a coal black color. But what really stuck out to me as he was walking away, he had these 2 white stripes going down his back, and they were like a whitish gray color. And it kind of gave me like the feeling like, I don't know, like when you look at a skunk. Like the exotic look of it. It was like that, but on a giant gorilla, a humanoid gorilla. And on the back of his calves, like on the back of his legs, he had like a white patch as well on each leg. And as he walked off, he looked over at me, like over his shoulder. I don't know if he was looking at me to make sure I wasn't following him, if I didn't have like a firearm, but I noticed when he walked, he didn't make a sound in the leaves. Like it was dead silent. And when you walk through the woods in Missouri, it's really loud with all the oak leaves. And that's what he did. He walked through all the oak trees, and he disappeared into the cedar trees. And once he got into the cedars, he was gone. And I was finally able to move because I was in shock. It felt like my feet were like frozen to the ground. And when he disappeared, I was able to move again, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just saw Bigfoot. Did I actually see that? So I took off running towards the house, and I went through the yard and back into the woods because this thing was heading like towards the creek bottom, and I knew the direction that he was going. So I ran over that way and like try to cut him off or catch up to him just to make sure that I actually saw what I saw. And when I got back into the woods, I just stood there and everything was dead quiet. I didn't see him. And all of a sudden I started hearing like this huffing sound like a huge caveman, just like, whoosh, whoosh. And it was comparable to when you're around like a horse, when it exhales, like you can tell it has big lungs. You can kind of feel its breath. It was like that. And I knew this thing was ticked off that I was following him, and I knew he was in there somewhere and not very far away. But that's what he did. He headed back towards the creek. So I just turned around and walked back to my house because I was like, this thing means business. Like, I better not follow it.
At that point, did you put the 2 and 2 together that the mushrooms were around the house and not farther away, and maybe he was eating the mushrooms out in the woods?
Yeah, I think that's what he was doing. I think he was targeting the mushrooms, and that's why he was so close to the house. I mean, he was right there in the wood line, not very far away. That, or he'd been watching me because I'd been venturing in the woods. like I said, I had strange experiences leading up to all this. So I don't know if he, I don't know, had like been following me, but also, I don't know. I have a lot of questions, but I do think he was targeting the mushrooms.
Right, right. Well, and it's like the more you do this, the longer you're in it, the more questions you have. It's like we get one answered and then there's 10 more new questions, so it's like you never get to the bottom of it. And plus it's speculation on a lot of part. I mean, we don't know, we're guessing because of behavior we've watched for the most part, so
Absolutely.
So what after that, what was the next thing that happened?
After that, I just kept thinking about the experience and I continued going out to the woods. I wanted to see this thing again, but my mind kept telling me like this was a once in a lifetime thing. Like you missed it. You didn't have your camera on you. You're never going to see it again. And I kept going out there looking for answers. And it was 3 weeks after I encountered that jet black Sasquatch that I was walking back up that same driveway, and it's a huge circle driveway, like I said, surrounded by forest on every end. And when I got to the top of the driveway, I was making my way back towards the house on the opposite end. And I don't know, like I developed this strategy of sneaking up on these things because I was determined to figure out what it was. And it was basically trying to avoid stepping on sticks, rocks, leaves, making any noise, and just taking a few steps and stopping and observing and just trying to be sneaky, essentially. But as I was making my way back, I was walking quietly, doing my thing, and observing everything around me. And for a moment, I wasn't paying attention, and I stepped on a piece of gravel, and it made this skidding sound like. And when that happened, I saw this jet black thing, just like what I had seen at Merrimack Springs, something on all fours, just scurrying through the woods like a chimpanzee. And I'm like, there's that thing again. The same thing that I saw in 2018 on September 14th, right before bow season. And by the time I got a good look at it, just like at Merrimack Springs, it got up on 2 legs and it slowly hid behind the tree. This thing was jet black. And again, my mind was thinking like turkeys, hogs, black bear, because what I'd seen at Merrimack Springs in 2018, I never saw it. Like I never got a good look at it. I just saw a hairy thing moving through the woods. And I'm seeing this again in 2019 in July. And I'm just staring at that tree because I know exactly where he is. He's only like 30 or 40 yards into the wood line, right off the road. And I'm thinking like, this thing's gone. Like it hid behind a tree. I'm not going to see it again. And as soon as I think that, this little bitty juvenile pops out from the side of the tree. But he's like quartering away from me. He has no idea I'm there. You can tell like he thought he heard something, but he couldn't figure out what it was. And like he went from alert to like back to calm. Like this is just another day in the forest for him. He thought he heard something and he wasn't sure what it was. And I'm just standing there looking at him. My mind is completely blown. This little guy, excuse me, he's jet black. He's got big round eyes. They're not almond shaped. They're round and they're really white, glossy like a light bulb, like really white. And you could see the pupils in the eye, like, but you can see a lot of the white. Like that's pretty much all I see is like big white eyes. And you can't see his nose because his whole face is covered with hair. It just reminded me of like Pac-Man, the creatures that are chasing around Pac-Man. Like you just see like these big white eyes. It was kind of like that, but this thing was jet black. He was well groomed. He wasn't nasty looking at all. He had really innocent eyes. It was just a little bitty juvenile. And you can see long, thin lips. His canines were dental white, but they rested on his bottom lip, like the top canines. You can just see 2 canines. And he had a really big, elongated, conical shaped head, which is unusual because I rarely ever hear that in reports. I just hear that it came to like a crest at the top. This thing had like a huge, elongated head. And he just, I don't know, he kind of just stood there like observing the forest. And he turned towards me, and when he saw me, his eyes like about bulged out of his head. And you could tell like it freaked him out seeing a human being. Like they are not comfortable with that at all. And like he went from like panic mode to serious mode. Like he freaked out, but then you could tell he got real serious. And when he was like next to the tree, he did this, like hid behind the tree. And once he went behind the tree, he was gone. And I looked left and right of the tree. I didn't hear him like running off or scurrying through the woods, nothing. Once he hid behind the tree, it was like a magic move, like boom, gone.
Just boom, he was gone. Wow.
Yeah. And that gave me a lot of information as to how these things avoid people and why people don't see them. Like they're extremely good at what they do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So do you think, you've said, in both of these encounters, you don't hear anything. Do you think that has to do with the morphology of their feet? Is it the size, the cushioning? I mean, to me, that I've wondered that, because it's like they either sound like a bulldozer coming through the woods, or they can be within 10 feet of you and you'd never know it, I mean, and as humans, it's hard to walk through the woods and not make noise. And as large as these things are, and the way that they can move through the woods and not make any noise, it's like, does that have something to have to do with, the size of their feet, the padding on their feet? I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think it has to do with the padding on their feet. And I feel like they can hear through their feet. They can sense vibrations. I've heard scientists talking about how Tyrannosaurus Rex could actually hear miles away through the padding of their feet. And apparently elephants can do it as well.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize that would answer. I mean, that puts things in a whole different perspective right there. If they can stand and do that, well, there's sure not any ever sneaking up on them. I mean, we're to the point we don't try to sneak up on them anymore because we take groups out, and you can't sneak up on anything in a group. We more or less make ourselves into, I hate to say a target, but we're just something that, the curiosity part of them wants to come check out, and that works a lot of the times. But okay, so you've at this point, you've seen the big one at the house, you've seen the small one. What happens next?
Okay, so later on in 2019 in the fall, I'm sitting inside my house and I got the window open that night. I was a cigarette smoker at the time and it was cold outside, so I just kind of had like my hand out the window and I didn't want to go outside and smoke. But I hear something in the woods that sounds like it's in distress, and just the best way I can describe it is like a chimpanzee being torn apart, like something's in pain. And I later on figured out that it was a fox, like a fox breeding call.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened next was and I did see foxes that night, but I see a fox come out of the wood line, and he comes out of the woods through the yard and back into the woods. And then I see another fox. He comes out of the woods through the yard and back into the woods. And then the whole time this vocalization's going off, and it's just an animal in distress call. And then I see a third fox, and he comes out of the woods, but he's like real low to the ground, which is really weird. I've never seen a fox do that, almost like he was crawling.
Mm-hmm.
And he follows the same direction that the foxes previously went towards. And this thing's just screaming in pain out in the woods. That's what it sounds like to me. And all of a sudden I hear like this big commotion on the other side of the yard in the wood line, just like, I don't know. In my mind, I thought it was like a whole group of deer just, and I turn on my spotlight and I shine it in that direction. All I see is like, I don't know, I'd say like 6 to 8 eyes, and they're all like bobbing up and down. They're glowing like a yellowish green color.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just shining my light into the woods, but all I can see is the eye shine. And they're just bobbing back and forth like this. And I'm just trying to figure out what the heck is that? That's got to be deer. And as soon as I think that thought, one of the eyes goes up like an elevator to about, I'd say like 10 feet, give or take. Like it was really high up. I've never seen anything that tall. But it was so smooth and fluent the way it just went up like that.
Right.
And I knew right there, like, oh my gosh, these things are out there right now. And once that happened, I could hear something in the direction where the foxes came out of the woods. I was hearing and I listened to that for quite some time, a few minutes, but it felt like forever. And it kept getting closer and closer and closer. I knew another one was coming. So like I took the spotlight off of the group of Sasquatch and then I shined it in that direction. And I found a gap in the woods. Like it was really thick in the woods, but there's this clearing. So I was like, I'm going to shine it right there in that clearing. And when this thing walks through there, I'm going to be able to see what it is. And that's exactly what happened. A few moments later, this, I would say adult sized Sasquatch, it was like a whitish gray color, walked right through that clearing. He never looked over at me. Like I hit him with the spotlight and he acted like it didn't even faze him or he wasn't bothered by it. And he walked towards that group of Sasquatch. But this thing had a round head, big, broad shoulders. Yeah, like I said, he was like a whitish gray color. It's really hard to describe what he looked like exactly, but he met up with that group of Sasquatch, and I shut the window, and I was like, oh my gosh, these things are out there. And I had like no desire to go outside because I just figured out what it was. Like I'd just seen a Sasquatch. I don't need to go out there to see it again. Like
don't need to get closer, right?
Yeah, I feel like if you didn't know what it was, you would go out there to maybe find answers. But once you know, like if you know for sure that they're out there, it kind of terrifies you. And that's where I was.
It can, because our brain has such a hard time processing it. I mean, even when you've seen them multiple times, your brain still is like, it's like it glitches or something, because we've been told they don't exist for how long? I mean, our whole lives, So I think it messes with you a little bit in that respect of, it's like, yes, I know they're real. Yes, I've seen them, but still, everything doesn't click for a minute or two, whether that's them doing it or it's just our human brains going, this isn't right. This isn't real. It isn't, it's one of those things that, but so, okay, you've got them around your house at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? What are you thinking? What are you doing now?
Well, the entire time I was out there researching, because I go out there every day trying to find answers, I noticed far off in the distance somebody was logging. Like you'd hear a chainsaw every day, all day long. And I think it was somebody who had a bunch of acreage that was creating like cattle fields. So I think they pushed them towards me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how long had you lived on this property before you started to notice this stuff?
My whole life.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so you had said before that there, you'd had strange things happen. So do you think your whole life you've had little things here and there happen and you just hadn't really put it together?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like one of the first experiences I've ever had was I was hunting in a chair right off of a deer trail, pretty like right there in between where I seen the jet black Sasquatch with the white stripes and the little juvenile. I was like right in between there, but I had my chair there. I was hunting. I didn't see anything that day. And that night I packed my stuff up and I went back inside. It was a dead still day. There was no storm, no strong winds, nothing. I get back out there in the morning time and I go back to my chair that's right next to this good sized cedar tree, and the cedar is broken about, I'd say like 7 to 9 feet high, and the top is sitting right there next to my chair. It's so fresh that you can smell the cedar. Like it totally wasn't broken the night before. Yeah. So that was like my first indicator that something was going on. And I think I remember like chuckling, thinking like, maybe Bigfoot did it. But in my mind, it's like, there's no way that could have just broke on its own. Like no tree fell on it. There was no storm. Nothing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And that, when you really get into it with people that, a lot of us have had things go on for multiple years, but like I said, we go back to the brain has to put it in a box. And later on you start to go, oh, wait, I had this happen, as I guess we're giving ourselves permission to remember those things or put two and two together. But But anyway, so let me ask you a question. Do you think recently that there's been an upswing in the Bigfoot activity, or just the weird activity in general here in Missouri, or is it staying about the same?
I mean, there could be, because with the conservation areas, the national forests, and the way the state is preserving the wildlife, and we got game laws, like back then, like it was rare for somebody to see like a white-tailed deer in Missouri. Like it was big news if somebody saw a whitetail. So they could be making a comeback, and there could be more encounters. But another part of me just says, there's the internet now, there's all these podcasts, books, TV shows, and people are talking about it more openly than before. But it could be either one. Like these things are making a comeback just like wildlife, and it's hard to say, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you noticed too, one thing I wanted to ask you, is there a pattern in the reports you are getting? Like, is it same time of the year, or do they look the same? Is there any kind of pattern in your reports, or is it just all over the place?
I mean, I could say that there's patterns, as far as like there's like clusters of reports in certain areas, or they follow certain waterways. But at the end of the day, these things seem to be pretty random, and I call them like a super predator, and there just doesn't seem to be a pattern to them, as far as trying to figure out like, oh, I had this encounter in June and July, so that means they're here in the summertime. Because then I've had things that have happened that make me question that. Once I got a pattern, like I had my experiences in the summer. My buddy in the Mark Twain, he was having serious activity in February. Or if I'd be out there hunting in the wintertime, I'd have Bigfoot activity. So it's like, okay, these things are here all year round. They live around the property. But then I start researching the property, and then things go cold. It's like they're not around anymore. Nothing ever happens. It's like, okay, are they migrating? It's really hard to figure out things. I mean, people like researchers can say, oh yeah, they're here at this time of year, but there's always something that challenges that idea.
Yeah, that's true. I know that my buddy Shane and I, Shane Carpenter, we discuss this every so often. It's like, okay, when people say migrate, I think they are, they have that thought in their head of like north to south, in a great distance. We were talking about this, and it's like, and let's just say they have a 200-mile home range, just so that you can give an idea. We've decided that maybe they migrate that 200-mile range. It's like they move through it, and they know when things are ripe, when there's berries, maybe they follow the deer, that type of thing, because a large animal like that, it's got to be moving constantly, because they would decimate if they stayed in a small area. They decimate the plants, the other life, the deer, anything else that they're eating. So I think they kind of move around constantly, but in a home range.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they definitely do decimate the deer population. I noticed when these things were around, there was a ton of deer. And then I remember I started having the Sasquatch experiences and encounters. And then throughout the years, it's like there's no deer. And I've noticed this on other properties too. When it starts off, there's just a ton of deer all over the place. And by the time it's over, like there's no more deer, no more Sasquatch encounters. Like, what the heck happened?
So maybe they're kind of following the deer too. I mean, yeah, it's like you said, you can't, when you think you figured a pattern out, it goes completely awry because they do something else that's wouldn't fit into the pattern. So yeah. Okay. So, after you've had the mail, you've seen multiples at the house, what happened next?
The next experience I wouldn't like classify it as a class A sighting. I did see it, but it was like something that happened really quick. But I'll tell you about it. Basically, I was researching. I think this was the following year in like 2020. And I had been sitting in a chair. I'd just sit there in the woods day after day and just let them come to me. And it worked for a little bit. I'd hear like trees being pushed over or loud thud sounds out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But that was about it. Like not too much. Strange gifting situations. And as I was sitting in that chair, I'd hear something in the woods. It just sounded like a little squirrel or a robin. And I just wasn't sure what it was, but day after day I'd hear it, and it seemed like it'd stay at about 80 to 90 yards away. And it was always in the same spot. So I was like, man, I bet that's a bird, but I feel like something's watching me. So I ended up sneaking down that trail that day, going down the ridge towards the creek, and I did my thing. I'd take a few steps, stop, and I try to walk as quietly as possible. And I got about halfway down that ridge, and I'm just standing there looking. My mind's just kind of drifting off, and I'm just thinking about whatever, anything really. And all of a sudden I hear this loud grunt. Just, it sounded like a monster buck in the rut, just a nasty grunt.
Yeah.
But I look over and I see this black figure. It's probably, I would say, like 4 to 5 feet tall. And when I see it, it blows steam out of its face, because this is like, I would say like 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
So like when it blew, like you could see the breath of the creature. Mm-hmm. So it grunted and then it blew like, whew, and it sounded like a deer when it blew. And you could see the breath. It was like an auburn color. But the strange thing about this encounter was it almost looked like somebody took dust and threw it up in the wind. And I don't know if that was speed or something supernatural, but it definitely looked strange. And it just disappeared. I don't know how else to say it.
Wow, that's interesting. So let's get into that a little bit. So do you think that these things are flesh and blood and just have abilities, that we don't understand? Or what do you think's going on?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I feel like they have abilities that we don't understand. And it was the same way when I told you about that juvenile encounter. When he hid behind that tree, it was like magic.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was supernatural, but I definitely entertained the idea because the Native Americans said the same thing and I witnessed the same thing. But like you said, there could be a scientific explanation to it all, and we're not putting it together.
Yeah, that we just don't quite understand it yet. Mm-hmm. That's because, the longer you're out there with them, the weirder the stuff there's just all these strange things that'll happen that you just cannot explain, and I'm not really sure. It's like, it's not necessarily, magic is not necessarily it's like you said, it seems like magic because we haven't figured it out yet, but mm-hmm. Hopefully we will be able to figure that out, before too long. So in this, timeline that you've laid out for us, when did you start your, doing interviews with people?
I think like in 2020, I told my stories on YouTube just to get them off of my chest. And then I noticed people in the comments had their own stories from like Michigan, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And I made a few friends that way. I went on Bigfoot Odyssey, an old YouTube channel, and I told my encounters on there, and I met more people. And then I started meeting people in Missouri. And by that point, I've heard too many wild stories. Like, man, I can't believe like I'm going to be the only one that hears this. Like, this needs to be documented. Like, people need to hear this stuff.
Right.
And I started the channel, and I started asking people if they tell their story on my channel, and it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, and I think there's more that goes on here in the state of Missouri than people really realize, mm-hmm. Because a lot of these people, they don't want anybody to know what's going on because they either don't want people on their land, or they don't want to be ridiculed about it, and because that still goes on. And that's, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'll tell you, but I don't want anybody to know, So, so I want you're working on something that you're calling the Killing Fields. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, like I said, people started reaching out to me, sharing their own experiences. And I had a guy named David who contacted me, and I called him up, and he told me what was going on his property. He said something's killing all his deer on the property. They break their necks, break their legs. He would find piles of deer. He got whooped at, and he's had all kinds of strange experiences. And I asked him, like, is it all right if I come out there? He said, oh yeah, absolutely. And I asked him, like, would it be all right if I bring my camera? He's like, you bring whatever you want. I'll do whatever you want. You just come out here and we'll make it happen. So I got out there immediately. And when I saw the land and how many deer were there and how much forest was around the area, it really blew my mind. And throughout the years, I was researching the property, and I'd experienced things. I haven't seen a Bigfoot there, but I have seen like black things dart across the trails into the woods. And I've definitely seen the balls of light that people talk about. Definitely not
Yeah.
fireflies, drones, or I don't know,
Mhm.
somebody with a flashlight. Like, they're definitely balls of light that just appear out in the woods. And
How big are the ones you're seeing, your balls of light?
I'd say like volleyball size.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because we've seen different lights on different encounters, anywhere from ping pong ball size up to headlamp, up to base or like softball. They just vary in size.
Mhm.
And are they a white light, or are they a kind of a yellow? What are you seeing?
I've seen like orange, like an orangish red color. I've seen blue. I've seen green, like kind of like a white color. I've seen different ones throughout the years.
And are they all on that property, or are you seeing them in multiple places?
In multiple places. Before I saw the jet black Sasquatch with the white stripes, it was, I don't know, maybe a few weeks before that encounter. I was up on top of the driveway, and I went to check a trail camera, and something whistled at me, like right down the driveway, just a loud, sharp whistle. And I thought, man,
Okay.
somebody's coming up the driveway. There was no one there. And a few seconds later, right in front of me, like 20 yards into the woods, because in the summertime, it's really thick in the woods. You can't see into the woods.
Right.
There was another whistle, except this one was high pitched and it had like a low tone to it. It was like dual toned. It sounded like somebody did that sharp whistle into like a pumpkin, like a hollow pumpkin. A
Mhm.
really weird sound. And then like I was almost waiting for a third whistle, and as soon as I thought that, like there was a third whistle to my right. So like it almost seemed like they triangulated around me. I couldn't shake that off. I went back home and just kept thinking about it, and I was like, something's going on up there. And I went back up the driveway, and at this point it's almost completely dark outside. And when I get back to that same spot where I heard the whistles, I see these I see these two orange orbs. They're about the size of a basketball, orange, like an orange yellow color, but they're floating through the woods, like together like this. And it
Oh, wow.
wasn't that far away. And I just got
Yeah.
this creepy vibe that just, I don't know, like my gut feeling told me, do not follow the orbs or those
Right.
lights. In my mind at that time, it was like somebody had lanterns and they were walking through the woods, or they had cell phones, but you didn't hear like any footsteps. And like I said, it wasn't that far away. But
Right.
I had the whistles, the lights, and then when I walked back to my house after I saw the orbs, I was halfway down the driveway. The driveway is like, I'd say like a quarter mile, maybe a little more, and it's forest on both sides all the way around. And I heard this loud thud sound, just like boom. It sounded like somebody picked up a big log and dropped it on the forest floor. And as soon as I heard that, I heard three whoops. And you could hear something moving through the woods. I don't know what it was. I mean, it was definitely a Bigfoot, but I don't know if it was like a juvenile or an adult.
Yeah.
And yeah, I heard the thud sound and three loud whoops, and the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. Like, oh
Wow.
crap, what is this? Because it was pitch black by that point, and I'm like,
Right.
what the heck? I just heard these whistles, seen these lights, and now there's like something unknown in the woods.
Yeah.
It definitely freaked me out.
Yeah. We've heard the thuds before a couple of times in the middle of the day. And then one time at night in the woods behind us. So yeah, we've heard those before, and those are definitely different. It's kind of weird, when you hear that big thud, because it sounds like something with a lot of weight hitting the ground, like you said, So that's definitely interesting. So, so are you still doing the killing fields right now? Are you still investigating that property?
Oh yeah, yeah, I am. And every time I go there, I experience a handful of things that I just can't explain, as far as wood knocks, strange vocalizations, the lights, gifting, just little things here and there. But I mean, I stay for like days at a time, sometimes a whole week. But in the
Mhm.
moment, it doesn't seem like very much, because it's like, huh, I didn't put those rocks on that stump where I left the food. Um, like
Yeah.
what was that vocalization the next day? Oh man, it sounded like something was charging through the woods. And it's not like all back to back stuff. It's like when you look back on the trip after you get home, you're like, I had this happen, that happened. But in the moment, like, it seems insignificant until you look back and really think about it all.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens to us when we go out. Sometimes it's like small things every day,
Mhm.
and at the time you're not really putting two and two together, and then you think about it, and you're like, oh wow, this day we had this, and we had this, and sometimes it's just paying attention to your camping area, because like you said, you put food out, and then there's rocks there, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't do that. Sometimes it's the small things. It's not like a lot of major things. So okay, well, let me ask you another question. Do you think Bigfoot and UFOs are connected?
Um, the only connection I've noticed is like the same areas people have had Bigfoot encounters, they experience UFO activity maybe years later. And I don't know. Like I haven't, like, I've been taking a lot of reports. I have never had anyone say I saw a UFO and like a Bigfoot came out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I definitely feel like if these things are interdimensional, maybe it's like the same activity as like the UFO alien topic. But
Right.
I
Right.
don't, I
Same
don't,
kind
I
of
don't know if it's
energy.
connected. I've just noticed that people that have had Bigfoot encounters and strange experiences have also had UFO encounters, but I don't feel like that's enough to say, yeah, they're connected.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's like, um, people will say, I saw this in the woods, or when we're out Bigfooting, we have things happen, and it's like, just because we saw the orbs doesn't mean they're connected to Bigfoot, even though we were Bigfooting.
Hmm.
you know so I wonder if that's kind of the same thing with, because we did have a UAP back in the spring. Now, we were on a Bigfoot expedition. We were out at night, but we had a light. We had a UAP in the sky that we dealt with for 2 hours. Now, does that mean the two are connected? No, it just means when we were out Bigfooting, we had a UAP experience. I wonder sometimes if people aren't trying to lay those two together, just because you're doing one and have the other. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. But you can't write it off either. I mean, you kind of have to look at it from the point of view of, like, let's say the Skinwalker Ranch. Like, there was definitely paranormal activity happening there. There was strange lights up in the sky, and they're seeing these strange animals that Native
mhm,
Americans talked about. That can't be a coincidence, all happening on this piece of property. But at the same time, maybe it is.
right? They're as bad as we are. They don't have answers either.
No, no.
So let me ask you, because this is not a topic I've gotten into real, I have enough rabbit holes, but I keep getting pushed toward this one. So here in Missouri, Dogman.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah. I believe in Dogman. I haven't seen one, but I'll tell you about one of the strange experiences. And like I said earlier in the podcast, I had strange experiences leading up to my Bigfoot encounters. Um, this one, I think I was maybe like 12, 13 years old,
Okay.
and I was sitting in my room. It was summertime. I remember it was hot as heck outside, and I had the window open. We used to use like box fans and the
Right.
AC heater that'd be in the window.
Right.
But I was sitting there watching Family Guy on TV, and I had my computer turned on. I don't know. I enjoyed like using MySpace and a program called like AOL to chat like with my friends from school. But I was sitting there doing my thing, and then I hear this werewolf howl. I mean, it was the most guttural, monstrous, demonic vocalization I have ever heard in my life. And it sounded like a Hollywood werewolf call blasted through a giant professional PA system. And it lasted like 5 to 8 seconds. I mean, it was super loud, super guttural, evil as heck. And as soon as that vocalization ended, there was another vocalization. It sounded like a woman screaming, like being tortured. I mean, it was god awful. And the crazy thing is like where that thing vocalized at is where I had seen the Sasquatch later on. Like the jet black Sasquatch that I seen with the white stripes, he went that way when he went towards the creek bottom. That white one that I saw that went through that clearing when the whole group was out there and I could see the eye shine, he came out of that same direction. And there's definitely cryptids around. Is there a connection? I don't know. But the same area I've heard a dog man, I ended up seeing Bigfoot later on in my life.
Yeah. So have you had anybody tell you encounters of dogman here in Missouri, or are you just primarily getting the Bigfoot stuff?
Yeah, I've had a few. There was one, where is it at? Greenville, Missouri. A guy was riding his bike through a conservation area out there with his German Shepherd, and he said he saw these helicopters in the park. They had the park closed down, but he didn't care. He went in there anyways. But he said the helicopter was flying over the park. They were claiming to like they were hunting hogs or whatever. But he said he saw this huge figure running down the ridge, and it crossed the road that he was on. His dog went chasing after it, and this thing was massive. Like from what he said, it was like 9 foot tall. And he said it definitely wasn't a Bigfoot, like it was a dog man. And another one was in an area where I was doing research at in the Mark Twain National Forest. Supposedly there was a lady, I think it was a lady, she saw a dog man in that same conservation area right there where my buddy's having Bigfoot encounters at, where I've been doing research. But anyways, supposedly there was a dog man encounter 2 days after I heard that there was a dog man encounter in that area. They posted up on Facebook and said they're closing down that park and they're running helicopters in there to hunt hogs. I thought that was a strange coincidence. And also right up the road, there was a lady back in the day. She said on her farm, there was a dog man that would come out of the woods and get into their chicken coop.
Wow.
Yeah. Like all in the same area. And also right down the road, my buddy, his name's Adam. He runs a channel called the Half Inch Wrench Crew. But his grandma claims that she'd see this creature with pointy ears, like this canine creature. And, that apparently it's been seen there several times. I think it was his grandpa that was like down the creek, and he'd hear, I think, what sounded like a baby crying out in the woods, and he ended up seeing like this werewolf creature all in the same area. Yeah,
that's something. Well, and it's odd that they shut down the parks and say they're hunting hogs, because usually they just put traps out for those. That's not necessarily something they hunt with helicopters, at least not here in Missouri. I mean, other states, and normally they don't shut the park down to hunt hogs either. So, there's a couple of older camping areas here in Southwest Missouri that have been shut down, and one of them looks like a war zone. It just looks like they've went in there and turned over the old concrete picnic tables, and those are big, heavy, right? Most of the time one person's not going to be able to turn those over. And I don't know, even if you had multiple people, but in this area, because there's a gentleman that has a podcast that's talked about being in there before and having some very eerie encounters. But he said the park itself, it's shut down. And I mean, they have massive barricades across the roads, right? They don't want anybody in there. And he said, when you get back in there, they're the picnic size tables that were like family ones, the bigger ones, that are like, what are they, 8-9 feet, the top of them. they're turned over, broken, destroyed. He's like, what goes in there and does that? He goes, if they were going to take that stuff out before, why did they just tear it up? It's questionable because there's nothing wrong with the campground. It's like, why wouldn't that still be open? Why that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, why they shut areas down. But, maybe they know something we don't know that's in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you'd be surprised what people would tell you if you just ask them, have you ever had anything strange happen in the woods? And they'd be like, what do you mean strange? Yeah. I actually asked the dealer at the Ford dealership in Missouri where I got my truck. I asked her, I was like, hey, have you ever had any strange experiences out in the woods? She's like, no, I don't think I ever had. Well, actually, it was like 2 weeks ago. This is what she told me. It was 2 weeks ago. My kids were outside playing in the yard, and she lives in an area called Cook Station, which is way out there in the boonies. Mm-hmm. And she said something was saying, help me from the woods. She's like, I did not let my kids go. And I was like, oh no. She's like, what do you mean? Oh no. I was like, you need to look that up. She's like, why? I was like, it could be a cryptid creature. She's like, really? I was like, yeah, they're known to do that. Mm-hmm. She had no idea about Bigfoot or that I run the channel.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how many people don't realize that there are, cryptids around. They're just oblivious to it, And I mean, maybe for good reason. They don't want to know what's out there because once you know, it's like, I don't know, you're addicted to it. You just have to keep going out there to see what you can find, or at least we do, It's like, okay, let's go back. What can we find? What can we get into? So let me ask you, have you ever been to Marley Woods?
I haven't, but I've heard of it.
Well, they call it the Skinwalker Ranch of Missouri. So, I got introduced to that, last fall. I mean, I'd heard of it, but actually got to go there. Now, we didn't go onto it because it's private property and, they're not real keen on people being on their property, but we were as close to it as we possibly could be. And it's an interesting area. We had some weird lights and weird noises and, we were only out there a couple hours. It was pretty cold, but yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. I definitely want to check it out if I can ever get an invite to the actual location, but I don't know. You're definitely in good hands with Shane Carpenter. He's a very good researcher, and I've heard a lot of good things about him.
Oh yeah, Shane and I have become pretty good buddies. We go out every once in a while, check things out. He comes and does the conference. He camps out with us. We've been on, property together. I was actually with him, and he got so tickled when this happened. He was finding holes with sticks in them, right? But every time he'd find them, he was alone. And he's like, I'm not saying anything about these stupid holes until somebody's with me. And we were, my husband and I and him and the landowner, we were all together hiking around on this property one day, and he found one of those holes, and he was so excited. And after he showed me, then I started to find them in places too. And it's like the stick is in the hole, and there's always dirt on the end of the stick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found the same thing before too. Like,
have you?
Down by the Merrimack River? Yeah, it's like these big foxholes, and there's like a bunch of sticks in there. And I showed my friend who's a researcher. He's like, they're looking for grub. They're sticking sticks down in there. I don't know really, but it caught my attention.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what, we're like, all right, are they digging for food, or is it a young one that's just entertaining itself while mama's doing something, because we found them by the rivers, on top of the hill. I mean, multiple places, there's no pattern to that either. They're just, showing up in places. So it's definitely interesting. So what do you got coming up in the next little bit, Miguel?
For me, I'm going to go back to the killing fields to do more research. There's a few areas in the Mark Twain National Forest that I want to camp at, and I'm going back to where I had my encounters, the encounters that I told you guys today. The last time I camped there, they were doing violent wood knocks. I mean, strong, powerful wood knocks. And then they pushed over a huge tree. I seen some strange lights. And I had moved away from that area. So it made sense why I was experiencing activity, because I kind of burnt the place out. I was going out there way too much. And I thought in my mind, if I do more research out here, I'm going to have more things that happen. But realistically, I was kind of tainting the area by going there way too much. These things want to remain elusive, away from people. And it just wasn't working out researching the same area over and over again. And it made sense why they were there to begin with, because there wasn't very much human pressure. That's where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. That's why we only go to the property that we camp on for the conference. We only go there during the conference. We might go out. Now, the landowner is there, but we don't bring in a lot of people all year round. And we have some kind of activity every time we're out there. It's not always major activity, but like the first time we ever camped out, we had a small storm, and one came through the camp afterwards, because not only did someone see it, but it kind of moved in and out of all the tents, and different people heard it, could hear. And the next morning we thought we had tracks. And so we got Shane up, and he was able to track it, because he had the grass along the edge of the camping area wasn't mowed. So it was really tall, and there was compression tracks after the storm, and he could see where that thing had moved completely all around our whole camping area. So yeah, we try not to go in there a lot. We go in there, like I said, maybe in the spring, check things out, and go back in the fall. And we've had activities. So we're going to kind of, stay with that. Not like you said, overwork an area, because they get tired of you.
Yeah, you definitely want to keep going to the area and do research as much as possible, but there is a thing as too much, like being in there way too much.
Yeah, exactly. And in the same area, we were talking about Dogman. The landowner has told me a couple of different times over the last couple of years, he's got dogs, they run around, whatever, but usually January, February, for whatever reason, he gets what he calls a hyena wolf call. Mm-hmm. And he says that it sounds kind of like a wolf call, but it's got that hyena laugh to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's had that a couple of times. And he's like, it shuts the dogs up, and they run back in the house and want nothing to do with it. And they're usually out barking at everything. And when that happens, they're done. So, I'm like, is that Dogman?
It could be. My buddy has a recording of that. It sounds like the Joker laughing, kind of like a hyena laughing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he said it's really creepy. He said it will make you stop and pay attention, Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh man, like I told you, I keep getting pushed toward that rabbit hole, and I don't want to go toward that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Got enough stuff with Bigfoot, and all the odd things that happen with it, but definitely. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to be mindful of your time today, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing, some of the things you've got going on, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Absolutely. Anytime you want me on your show, just let me know.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And, I appreciate you, and, we'll have to get out and maybe do some research together sometime.
Yeah, I look forward to it, and I appreciate you for having me on your show, Marianne.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. You take care of yourself.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's the show for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. And remember to go on and like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow the tribe, and it helps us keep the boots on the ground. So remember, show me your Bigfoot.